For decades, they were places that didn't exist. Not on maps, not in official records, and certainly not in the public consciousness of the Soviet Union. They were known only by a nearby city and a number, like Arzamas 16 or Chelyabinsk 65. These were the Soviet Union's secret cities, the beating heart of its nuclear weapons program. The official term for these settlements was ZATO, a Russian acronym for Zakrytoye Administrativno Territorialnoye Obrazovanie, or Closed Administrative Territorial Formation. This bureaucratic mouthful was the code for a world built on secrecy. After World War II, as the Cold War intensified and the nuclear arms race began, the Soviet government realized it needed to protect its most critical scientific and military secrets. The idea was to create a parallel geography, an invisible network of cities that would be completely isolated from the outside world. The purpose was simple: compartmentalization and security. By isolating these key facilities and their workers, the state could prevent espionage and protect its nuclear breakthroughs. This concept wasn't born out of a vacuum. It was, in part, a direct emulation of the U.S. security protocols around the Manhattan Project and its secret city of Los Alamos. Secrecy was a matter of life and death. The locations of these ZATOs were scrubbed from all public maps. For the average Soviet citizen, these places simply didn't exist. Mail was addressed to a nearby city with a post office box number. For example, a letter to a scientist in Sarov would be sent to Arzamas 16. This system of postal code names became their unofficial identities, their ghostly aliases. Anyone who lived or worked in a ZATO had to sign a strict non-disclosure agreement, pledging to never reveal the nature of their work or their location. They were citizens of a country that didn't officially have their city on its books. They were, in a sense, residents of nowhere. These cities were not just concepts of secrecy, they were tangible places built from the ground up under extreme conditions. Their creation was a monumental undertaking, blending strategic necessity with stark social realities. The location of a ZATO was never random. They were meticulously chosen for their isolation. Most were deep within the Urals and Siberia, far from any international borders and out of range of potential enemy bombers. But isolation wasn't the only requirement. They were also built near major rivers or lakes, a crucial factor for a simple yet massive need: water. The cooling systems for nuclear reactors and the industrial processes of uranium enrichment and plutonium production required colossal amounts of water. The early workforce for these secretive projects was not a highly paid, elite group. Instead, the foundation of these cities was laid with the forced labor of the Gulag. Tens of thousands of prisoners were brought in from the vast network of Soviet labor camps to build the initial infrastructure: the roads, the fences, and the first buildings. They toiled in brutal conditions, with little food and no pay, to construct the very facilities that would later be home to the Soviet scientific elite. While the Gulag prisoners were building the foundations, the scientists and their families were living in a different reality. To incentivize the best minds in the country to work in a life of total secrecy and isolation, the Soviet state provided them with a remarkably privileged life. While the average Soviet citizen endured food shortages and long lines, residents of ZATOs had access to well-stocked supermarkets, better housing, and superior health care. This wasn't just a perk, it was a psychological tool. By creating a literal golden cage, the state secured the loyalty of its most important workers. For instance, in cities like Arzamas 16, now Sarov, residents had access to rare goods like imported chocolate, fresh fruits, and high-quality clothing. This economic and social comfort created a buffer, making the restrictive nature of the cities more palatable. Crime rates were virtually non-existent, and a sense of community flourished among people who shared a unique and heavily guarded purpose. The entire city was run by a military and security apparatus, not a typical city council. The checkpoints were the gateways to a completely different world. To enter or leave, residents had to present special permits in addition to their passports. The passports themselves were a kind of secret. They would often show a different public city as the holder's place of residence to maintain the illusion of non-existence. This constant state of control and oversight was the price of their comfort, but for many it was a price worth paying to live in a Soviet paradise, hidden from the rest of the world. The system of ZATOs was a vast network, each city with a unique and vital role in the Soviet nuclear program. These were not mere administrative centers. They were the forges of the atomic age, where science, industry, and secrecy converged. If the US had Los Alamos, the Soviet Union had Arzamas 16. This was the birthplace of the Soviet nuclear arsenal. Located about 400 kilometers east of Moscow, on the site of a historic monastery, it was transformed in 1946 into a top-secret research facility known as KB-11. Here, a team led by physicist Yuli Khariton, and later including Nobel laureate Andrei Sakharov, worked under immense pressure to catch up to the Americans. Their efforts culminated on August 29, 1949, with the successful test of the first Soviet atomic bomb, RDS-1, dubbed Joe-1 by the West. This single event shattered the American nuclear monopoly and fundamentally shifted the global balance of power. The city was so isolated that children from Arzamas 16 could only compete in academic and music competitions against children from other closed cities. While Arzamas 16 was the brain of the nuclear program, Chelyabinsk 65 was its heart. Located in the southern Urals, this city was established in 1947 and was home to the Mayak plutonium plant, the first industrial-scale facility for producing weapons-grade plutonium in the USSR. But this ambition came at a devastating cost. The initial years of production were marked by a total disregard for environmental and human safety. Radioactive waste was simply dumped into the Tesha River, exposing thousands of local residents to lethal levels of radiation. This culminated in the Kyshtym Disaster on September 29, 1957. Due to a faulty cooling system, a storage tank of highly radioactive waste exploded with the force of 70 to 100 tons of TNT, contaminating an area of over 20,000 square kilometers. Because the city was secret, the disaster was named after the nearest known town, Kyshtym, and the truth was hidden from the world for decades. The network extended far beyond these two. Krasnoyarsk 26, now Zheleznogorsk, in Siberia, was home to a massive plutonium complex built 600 feet under a granite mountain to protect it from a potential American attack. The facility was so large it was nicknamed the Underground City. Penza 19, now Zarechny, was a major site for the assembly and disassembly of nuclear warheads, while Sverdlovsk 44, now Novorossk, was a key center for the enrichment of uranium using early, less efficient gaseous diffusion technology. Together, these cities formed a hidden archipelago of atomic power, their very existence a secret locked away in the heart of the Soviet Union. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked a monumental change for these secret cities. Their very reason for existence, the Cold War, was gone. The once invisible cities were now exposed to the world, but their secrets weren't easily unlocked. Overnight, a government that had spent decades hiding these cities suddenly had no choice but to acknowledge them. Many ZATOs were officially given real names, shedding their old numbered aliases. Arzamas 16 became Sarov, Chelyabinsk 65 was renamed Ozersk, and Krasnoyarsk 26 became Zheleznogorsk. The old postbox names became historical footnotes, even as the cities themselves remained tied to their nuclear heritage. But the change was not absolute. Today, many of these cities remain closed. While they are no longer completely absent from maps, they still require special permission to enter. They are often managed by Rosatom, Russia's state nuclear energy corporation, or the Ministry of Defense. They continue to be hubs for nuclear research, weapons development, and the maintenance of Russia's nuclear arsenal. In fact, a 2023 report estimated there were still over 40 closed cities in Russia. The collapse of the Soviet Union created a major international security crisis. The immense nuclear complex, its secrets, and its vast inventory of materials were now under the control of a financially unstable new government. Concerns mounted in the West about the possibility of loose nukes, that nuclear materials or even entire warheads could be stolen or sold on the black market. The problem wasn't just physical theft, it was also the potential for brain drain. Thousands of highly skilled nuclear scientists and engineers were left with little to no pay. The fear was that these experts, with their unique knowledge, could be recruited by other countries or non-state actors seeking to develop their own nuclear programs. In response, the United States, through bipartisan efforts like the Nunn-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, began to assist Russia and other former Soviet republics. From 1992 to 2013, the U.S. provided over $10 billion in funding to help secure and dismantle nuclear weapons, destroy delivery systems like missiles and bombers, and improve the physical security of nuclear materials. These programs were crucial in securing 3,200 strategic nuclear warheads that were located in Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. All of these were safely returned to Russia, leaving those countries nuclear-free. While significant progress has been made, the legacy of the secret cities remains. They serve as a stark reminder of the Cold War's hidden world and the long-term challenges of securing a massive nuclear infrastructure. Their future is now tied to a different global landscape, but the fences in the history of secrecy continue to cast a long shadow.